Good afternoon. I'm going to be speaking to you. We developed a case study relating to the dietary supplements with Nanoscale Ingredients. However, we're kind of looking at a more broad-based question, trying to stimulate discussion about how nanotechnology kind of fits into the current regulatory framework. It's kind of an overarching question that we are using this case to discuss. And so I'm going to break this presentation up into 3 segments. The first is I'm going to discuss the supplements industry as it exists and regulation related to dietary supplements. And then I'm going to discuss the current status of nanotechnology, nanoparticles in these dietary supplements. And then I'll conclude with what we consider some things that you have to consider related to the dietary supplements with nanoparticles, maybe some downsides or just issues that we should be thinking about in hopes that it will stimulate audience discussion. So what exactly is a dietary supplement? They are defined as products other than tobacco, which are intended to supplement the diet and that contain a wide range of dietary ingredients, including vitamins, minerals, herbs, other botanicals, and amino acids. So basically, people who take a daily multivitamin, they're taking their dietary supplements. It's a really huge industry, and I'll show you how huge in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the FDA's regulatory power. The FDA regulates in 2 different kind of pathways. You've got prescription drugs, biologics, food additives, and medical devices. And industry has to prove that these products are safe before they can be marketed. Whereas you have the cosmetics, food, and dietary supplements, whereas the FDA has to show that a product is unsafe before it can take any regulatory action. So the idea in this category is that these materials have been used for a long time, so they're probably going to be safe. We have to prove that they're unsafe before we can take people's rights to sell them away. And it's not like we're talking about a small industry here. The dietary supplements are used by more than 100 million Americans. It's a $25 billion industry. In the first 10 months of last year, there were roughly 1,000 health problems reported, including 9 deaths and 64 life-threatening illnesses. But the FDA expects or believes that the number of problems is underreported and that minor and serious health problems are probably more around on the order of 50,000 cases per year. So people have begun marketing supplements with nanoscale ingredients, and there are roughly 43 of these on the market as of March of last year. Some of these products include colloidal silver, which are somewhat infamous. They were made infamous by a man named Paul Kerrison, who kind of made a big media splash a couple years ago, and we'll discuss him in a moment. But they also include other products which seem a little interesting, like mesocopper or mesoiridium, or a product marketed as nanoslim. So we all like our buzzwords, don't we? And here is a website that's pretty typical of some of these companies' websites, the way they're marketing directly to people. And so this web page is marketing colloidal silver and colloidal gold. They, however, also produce mesocopper or nanocopper products, and mesoplatinum is another product. And on their web page, they're saying that they make no health claims, because you can't make direct health claims if you're a nanosupplement. But we found our products are helpful in a wide variety of applications as dietary mineral supplements. They supplement the immune system function. They improve focus and concentration. They also provide a calming effect. And they may improve motor skills and sports performance. So I guess we should all run out and get ourselves some colloidal silver and colloidal gold. Because I don't know about you, but my soccer skills are lacking. The price is actually pretty high. So it's, what was that? Oh, I think some of them are like, $80 for a bottle of this. It's pretty extreme, actually, at least in my opinion. And then we have health risks that they're trying to persuade people that don't exist. So on this Colloids for Life, which this last website was the company Colloids for Life, they say a common question: does mesosilver cause argyria, which is a bluing of the skin? And they claim no, that argyria is not caused by the consumption of colloidal silver, but rather by silver salts, high concentrations of ionic silver, and protein-based silver particles, but not true colloids. However, there are numerous journal articles which cite the occurrence of argyria after the consumption of colloidal silver. So that includes McKenna, Hull, and Zone, as reported in the Journal of Dermatology in 2003, which there was a direct relationship between a marketed colloidal silver product and the development of bluing in their fingernails and skin. That's just one example. A more common example is this Paul Harrison. He was on a number of shows, including MSNBC and on CNN, and he's kind of referred to as the blue man. He started taking colloidal silver around 20 years ago and continues to take it as he espouses the health effects despite the fact that he's turned blue. So it takes all kinds. And so now that we've kind of shared with you the current status of meso products or supplements with nanoparticles in them, we'd like to kind of consider nanotechnology in general and where these fit into the framework. And there are risks associated with nanoparticles, which for the most part we consider to be pretty good. When we're developing new medical tools, we like the fact that these things can cross the blood-brain barrier and that they have high active surface area. However, if they're not being regulated, then we don't really know what's happening when people are just consuming these particles in whatever mixtures they wish to consume them. It's not studied, and so we worry that some of these traits that make them potentially, that makes nanoparticles a potential groundbreaking tool, can also be causing risk for this continual ingestion of these particles. And then we kind of want to consider a more overarching life cycle, because while there aren't a whole bunch of these products right now, consider 5 years from now when someone gets the idea that in this $25 billion industry, maybe we want to make a nano-based multivitamin, and everyone starts taking it. And so the actual volume of nanoparticles that are being cycled through this, quote, life cycle that I'm going to talk about will increase substantially. So if someone decides that they and their family are going to take mesosilver, for instance, then they're ingesting it, and two things are going to happen. Either there's going to be accumulation, or it's going to pass through their system. If it passes through their system, then it ends up in the water table. So it's possible that different water treatment plants can filter out these nanoparticles, but we all know that our water treatment system in the United States is not perfect. In fact, Portland just installed these great big vats to take care of the over runoff during storms. So if large cities are just taking care of these larger problems, then you have to anticipate that smaller towns and cities have problems with sewage runover. So then once it gets in the water table, it either ends up in the ocean and the fish are consuming it, or it ends up in the plants and we're consuming the plants. We consume the fish, so then everyone kind of starts consuming some of these nanoparticles. And while there are a few people consuming them and it's ending up in the general water stream, that's probably fine. But as more people may start consuming them, then it might grow to be an issue of concern. So the step one is mesocopper from manufacturer to consumer, and this company is called Nanoscale Supplements or something like that. And they say that no adverse side effects have ever been reported. They also say mesocopper is non-toxic and refer you to their own MSDS. And they say that it's manufactured in an FDA-registered facility. And while these things are probably all true, they're also misleading. Because just because something's manufactured in an FDA-registered facility doesn't mean it's FDA-approved. However, to the layman, that is implied by the statement. Or I would assume it would be implied to many of my, say, aunts and uncles. However, according to According to their MSDS, there are no risks. However, according to alternate copper MSDSs, chronic copper exposure, which is what we're talking about if you're taking it in supplement form over and over again, can lead to discoloration of the skin and hair, irritation of the skin. It may damage the kidney and livers. And it's even worse for people who have pre-existing conditions where the consumption of this product may aggravate it. When we consider the waste stream, steps 2 and 3 of my life cycle photo, then we need to consider what happens to materials, to different fish and, say, plants. And I went ahead and looked at the toxicology research, and there's been some experiments on copper nanoparticles in wheat and mung beans that show that contaminated, well, in this case, agar, will lead to the reduction in growth, and that's directly proportional to the copper nanoparticle concentration, which is actually quite high in this case. So we might want to zero in on the low range to see at very low levels what the effect is. And there's actually an uptake, an accumulation in the plant over the 2 days they tested. And the same in zebrafish, they show that there's actually substantial gill damage to the fish upon exposure to copper nanoparticles, and that the copper nanoparticles were more toxic than just copper in the water system. So if we're releasing these particles into the water stream, then we're talking about contamination in fish and damage to the health of the animals. And then the final step was the idea of unconscious consumption. If we're contaminating the fish and the plants with the water that contain the nanoparticles, then ultimately we as general consumers will be consuming these particles in much lower concentrations than the initial consumer. So with this, the idea is that I'd like to open it up for a general audience discussion if this were being presented as a case study in a classroom environment, trying to get people to look at maybe loopholes or places where nanoparticles, we'd like to think that current regulatory framework will take care of this, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe some places we need to be looking more carefully at the potential effects, or some of these regulations have to change.